Yeah, so is the screen visible to all of you?
Mm.
Yeah, should I start?
Yes, whenever you want.
Okay, so hello everyone. Myself Ramesh Qureshi, and today I'll be talking about my master thesis, which I did with Miguel and Luis while I was studying my M2. So yeah, so I'm a doctoral student currently in Trinity College Dublin, and I come from India, and most of you may have already been figured that out that I come from India, and that may be due to the extra information you have about how I speak, how I look, probably how I pronounce words, my accent, and that is because you possess some extra information about any culture or a place. So, and these extra information leads to some biases. And are these biases are good or not? Well, not exactly. We don't know actually, and so that depends how you use these biases in real world. So today we will be talking about such kind of biases and how they play their role when they are induced in the machine language models we use nowadays pretty frequently. And more specifically, I'll be talking about language models, but the topic is more broader than I talk about, and the process I will be presenting today will be and can be applicable to other aspects also. So today I'll be talking about how can we mitigate unintended bias in mass language models, and we will see how we can define a bias and what are the problems and what we did to mitigate such biases. So as usual, I'll start with the problem itself, problem at hand, and I'll try to motivate and why this is important. Then moving forward, I will start with explaining how one can mitigate these unintended biases and the proposed framework we worked upon. And finally, to examine the proposed framework, I will explain the experiments we did, and then we will discuss about the results and the conclusion. And finally, we talk about the future aspects of this work. So let's start with the problem itself. And I know that most of the people know more than me about the importance of mitigating biases nowadays in machine learning models. So I'll start with just a simple example. So this is an example of Compass, a tool which is used by US judiciary to examine and to predict the the like how possible how the person is likely to commit a crime in future. So these are the results from that model, and as you can see that there are some offenders which have like pretty prior offenses, for example domestic violence and grand theft, and then there are subsequent offenses also, and the model gives a low risk score to that guy, while the other one has one petty theft and no subsequent offenses, and the model gives it 6. Why though? The reason might be in front of you because, like, while being calculating these scores, uh, the people or the employees actually feed in the information with their history, with their photos, with their names, where they belong, and the model actually somehow learns to use its inherent bias to create a problem with this kind of use case. As we were more biased towards language oriented applications of it, let me show you an example which is more language oriented thing. And here, this is a work done by some guys at NLP, and they showed a map of the world. And here we can see that the places which are marked with red colors are usually associated with bad words in language models. So like these places are more closer to the words like terrorism or hate or crime, something like that. Whereas the places which are marked with blue color are usually associated with good words in the language models. For example, good, happy, prosperous, etc. So there are some inherent bias which we can see in the language models as well. Now, the question arises: why and what are the problems are there because of these biases? And like as we all know that we are deploying machine learning models nowadays to detect hate speech or abusive language on Twitter, on Facebook. And due to these biases in language model, this actually can reduce the performance of the language model. As well as the worst thing is like these, because of these biases, this will induce the language model to actively discriminate against the same group we are trying to protect. So these are the pretty challenging tasks in current scenario of machine learning and deep learning in general. So the first question which comes into our mind is what are the possible sources of such biases? Like where are the sources? How do we track these biases so that we can stop these biases to come into our language models? So during our work, we actually find out two major uh, sources or two major factors which affects the induction of biases in language model. These are the data and the definition of bias. Now, while addressing the elephant in the room that we as humans are biased, we are the ones who induce these biases in the data. But as I'm saying biases, and as I started my presentation with, all the biases are not bad. And we don't want to remove every bias in the language model because it is associated with some information we may want to use. So we actually need to define the bias properly as well. So that's where the definition of bias come into place. And while we want to mitigate the bias, we don't want to remove every kind of bias the language model has. We want to remove only those biases which may have negative implications while we use them in our use cases. And when I say use cases, this makes the process more complex, because when you change the use cases or when you change the application of the machine learning model, the definition of the bias also changes, because bias is a subjective thing and you can't define it, and it's very difficult to define a bias objectively. While if you want to reduce a bias or unintended bias in a language model, you need to define the bias objectively so that you can apply some algorithms to it and you can quantify it and then you can reduce it. So these are the two major sources of the biases and the challenges which we wanted to tackle during this work. And yeah, so regarding data also, we trust the data blindly, which should not be the case. So these are the two major aspects to consider while we work on mitigating biases. Now, I'll start with the framework called Uncover framework, which was recently published in 2021 by LNNLP again, and they actually proposed a method to probe and quantify biases through underspecified questions. So they actually defined a way to quantify such unintended biases in the language model. And I will explain you how this framework can tackle both the data as well as the definition part of the biases. So let's start with what do they mean by the underspecified questions. Yeah, so that's how the underspecified questions are defined. So the underspecified questions are nothing but the queries which has no factual support for either of the choices. For example, as you can see in the paragraph below, uh, I want to check the nationality stereotype in the language model. Now, what you can do is you feed the language model or the question answering model a paragraph which goes like a Libyan man lives in the same city with a Frenchman, and you ask the model who was dangerous and looked like a thug. Now, observe in this case that you are not feeding in any information about the history or anything about the Libyan man or the Frenchman. You just put some demographic properties, and then you ask the question about something else. And when you get the answer, you get to know about the inherent bias in the language model. So this is an example of question answering model. While in this work, we actually targeted the mass language models because like it is easy to get, and like there were already available baselines for this. So in this work, specifically, we targeted only mass language models, and the bias we choose is the gender bias, which is associated with the occupation. So this is just a notice for the rest of the presentation. So yeah, so in our case, the template would look like this. So you ask or you present the this template to the model. For example, X1 got off the flight to visit X2, mask, and then A. Here, X1 and X2 are the subjects we used in our case. For example, John and Mary. So X1 and X2 are the names of male and female candidates. A here is the attribute you want to ask to the model. For example, here is the senator. It can be lawyer. It can be anything else, homemaker. And you want the model to fill in the mask token. So you provide this example and you expect the model to fill in the place of the mask. Now, while filling in the place of the mask, yeah, yeah. So while filling in the mask, you can actually get to know the inherent bias of the model, because these contexts are designed in such a way that both the subjects are equally likely to be the senator, for example, in this case. And like if the model is favoring any one of the subject, it shows the inherent bias of the language model, and then in this way you can calculate the bias present in the model. So far I showed you how can we quantify, but how actually we use the equations and the mathematical part of the project to quantify the biases in values. So we'll start with the example in this case, and the authors of the Uncover framework proposed a method which includes four different variants of a template. So here I'm talking about the template which you can see here is like Gerard lives in the same city with Jennifer, and the question is who was the hunter. Now there can be two modifications in this question and the paragraph, which will be helpful to quantify the bias in it. So the first modification is if you switch the subjects with each other. For example, Gerald live in the same city with Jennifer. If you switch Jennifer and Gerald, you'll get this example, which is Jennifer lives in the same city with the Gerald, and then you ask the same question: who was a hunter? Now, in this case, when you switch the subject, so S is the probability given by the language model of, for example, Gerald being the hunter and for Jennifer being the hunter in this case. So when you switch the subjects, what we expect is that the probability of Gerald being the hunter should be the same because you are not changing anything significant in the paragraph. So it's like Gerald is in the same city with Jennifer, Jennifer is in the same city with Gerald, it's the same thing. So the question who was a hunter that should not get affected with it. But you can see that the probability scores of in both the cases changes as you switch the subjects. Similarly, when you negate the attributes, so for example, in this case, we are asking who was a hunter, but for example, if you ask who can never be a hunter, so when you are getting a probability of zero point 0.6 in this case for Gerald being a hunter, you expect this probability to be 1 minus 0.26 because you are asking the negated question. So if you ask who can never be a hunter, uh, the probability of Gerald being not a hunter should be 1 minus 0.26, but it's not the case. So because of these irregularities or the errors in the probability scores of the model, you can actually quantify the inherent biases in it. How? Uh, so, so yeah, before moving forward, I would like to introduce or define some notations I'll be using in the slides so that you don't get confused. So the template I just show you is the combination of context, subjects, and attributes. So template is a collection of all these three, where the context is the scene I'm talking about. For example, sent a letter, go to the flight, sitting in a park, etc. Subjects are the names of the candidates, for example, John, Mary, Josh, Alexander, something like that. And attributes are the occupation in our case, dentist, accountant, banker, etc. So these three things makes a template, and then in the template you can make changes like subject switching and attribute negation to create those four variants which I showed you. Now, how to calculate the errors with the help of these variants? Uh, is like this. So I talked about two kinds of errors, which is positional error and attribute error. Capital S gives you the score given by the model of the subject being the answer. And you calculate these errors with the help of these two definitions. So the positional error is the error you get when you switch the subjects. So you just take the difference and then take the mod of it to calculate how much the probability is being affected when you switch the subjects in the paragraph. Similarly, when you negate the question, so negation is done by the bar sign on the attribute. So when you negate the attribute, you can actually calculate the attribute error by taking the difference of these two values while you negate the error, negate the attribute. So now you need a metric to combine these two errors in a one single entity, and then and that's how you define it. So we have a quantity called B, which is defined for x1 given x2, a, and tau being the template, and you calculate the bias of the model towards x1 by using this equation, which is just the average of all kind of all kind of errors you have for subject splitting and attribute negation. Now this is defined for x1. You can similarly define it for x2. For example, Mary, you are defining for John. You can define it for Mary, and then you can combine it using this value called C, and this is just the average of these values, the difference of these values. So here in this case, if you define C x1, x2, alpha tau, if the value of C is positive, it means that the model is biased towards or like giving favorable answers toward x1. And if you are getting the value of C as negative, it means that the language model is biased towards x2. And our motive is to bring this value down to 0. So like in the ideal case, the C should be 0 if the model is unbiased. Yeah. So I hope I am clear so far. If you have any problem, just please please stop me in between. Yeah. So now, so we have a measure to quantify the bias in our case, and this is for a single template. Now, what if we want to calculate uh, such biases for the model as a whole? So, for example, you want to define how much the model is biased towards given a data set. So, you want to define aggregated metrics. So, we have something called gamma, and gamma is used to define the bias towards a subject X1, which might be John or Mary, given attribute banker or something like that. So, if you want to define that how much the model is biased towards John being a banker, you just take the average over other attributes all over the templates by fixing the X1 and attribute and taking average over X2 and tau. And for a fair model, this value should be 0. And a positive value means the bias is to the model is biased towards X1, and negative is the vice versa of it. Now, you can, by this value, you can actually define the model bias intensity. So these are the main metrics we use to measure the bias in a model as a whole. So model bias intensity is the measure of how intense the bias is in the model, and actually you can calculate it by using the maximum of the gamma over the attributes. So you can check for which attribute the model was being the most biased, and then you take the average over all the subjects. So this actually, so mu defines the intensity of the bias over a data set. Similarly, if you want to define that how often the model was biased, you just take a sigma function of it. So if the model is biased, like it's positive, you take 1. If model is not biased, you take 0, and you just count how many times the model was being biased. So in this manner, the eta or the count weights matrix gives you a measure of how often the model was biased. So the model bias intensity, how much intense the bias was, and how the count based metrics give you how often the model was biased. Now, so far, I defined how to how can we define bias, how can we calculate it. Now the major part arrives as how to mitigate the unintended bias. Now, before moving forward, the problem of mitigating the bias has 3 challenges which we were trying to solve. And the first of them is manual annotation from human subjects, because the first thing that comes to your mind, that why don't we give the data to human subjects and let them annotate it and then fine tune over that data set. But the thing is, like, this is not a easy task to tag the data unbiased in an unbiased manner, because apparently human subjects will be tagging the data and the data will contain somehow the inherent biases of them. So it's not easy, and it requires a lot of human power as well. So we don't want this to come into our path. The second thing is we need to quantify the bias in question answering model algorithmically, which I just defined how we can do that. But after defining the bias, we should also have a framework which can take the quantity and use it to reduce the bias in the language model. And the third and the most important part is transferability. That is that I define, like I said before, that transferability is the most important part, because the definition of bias changes as per use cases, and as your use case change, you should have a framework which can adapt to different use cases. So you should have a framework, and if the definition of the bias changes, your model should adopt that change. And guess what, like these three challenges can be handled easily with the deep reinforcement learning. How? I'll explain in the next part, which is the proposed framework. So before going into the framework directly, I will just brush up some basics of reinforcement learning and how we are going to use reinforcement learning with language models. So the most important part, and one of the most important part of reinforcement learning, is policy. And the policy is basically the set of rules which decide how the model would react in a given condition. For example, if you have a language model and you want to choose the next word, you have some actions. So with policy, you can actually define which action should I take, or the language model should take. And in our case, we use the stochastic case. So the policy can be deterministic or stochastic. In our case, we are dealing with language model, which is stochastic in nature. So we are taking the stochastic case of reinforcement learning and the policy. Here, given the state and the action, the policy denotes the probability that the action A may be chosen in the state S. And we propose that the policy in our case is the language model itself, because we are asking a question to the language model, and the answer we get is the actions, probable actions, and we get the probability of those actions. So we are treating the language model as the policy. And the another important things are the action space and reward function. So action space. So action space all consists all the possible actions one can have when given a model. And so in our case, the action space is the combination of all the possible answers we can have when we feed the language model with the template or the four variants of the template. So we will have four different answers for all the templates, and then we can calculate the rewards out of it. So now the reward. So the reward function calculates how good the model is performing as per our needs. So in our case, we want the bias to be 0 or reduced. So we need to define the reward model in such a way which promotes the bias to become 0. And as we are dealing with only two subjects in our case, so we will only take care of the two subjects we are dealing. For example, we are just talking about James and Mary. However, language model can answer various different answers. So we are only taking the account of the values assigned to James and Mary, and we are not using the other values. So in this work, we propose two kinds of reward function. Which are defined as R0 and R1. C is the value of the bias I just defined in the previous slides, that which defines the bias of a model given a template tau. And so R0 is the negative of the absolute value, because we don't want to tune the language model bias towards some entity. We want the absolute value of the bias to be 0. So we take the absolute value of it, and we define two kind of reward function, that is minus absolute value of C and 1 minus absolute value of C. In this case, we want the C to be 0. So the R1 reward function pushes the model to make the R1 to 1, whereas the optimum value of R0 should be 0. And why we take these kind of reward function, I will explain in the later part of the presentation when I discuss the results. So we have two kinds of reward function. Now, how do we update the policy? So for the contextual bandit problem we are dealing with, so the framework we are using in this case is called contextual bandit, and we are using that to update the policy, and the policy will be updated as per the value function. So here the V theta is the value function which define that how good you are in, how much the expected reward you will be getting if you are in a state S, and you take the gradient step in that direction which increases the reward of the model. So this is defined as the expectation value of the gradient of log p theta. So p theta is the function which models the probability of alpha. Alpha being the combination of answers obtained when the model is fed with template tau. So this basically gives you how probable the combination of answers given the template tau, and R is the reward function we are using in this case. So the update function or the step we are going to update in the policy are dependent on these two functions. And yeah, so this is how the proposed architecture look like. So let me explain this structure properly. So in the starting, we have template. As I said before, that template is like a context with a question or a mask, and you feed that template in the language model with all the four variants you have, with the subject flipping and attribute negation. Then you have four different answers. After you get the four different answers, you feed it into the reward model and you get the reward. Once you get the reward, you can actually calculate the updation function I just defined, and you can actually update the parameters of the language model with the reward function, and you reinitiate the state with different templates. So you feed in different template, then the state is reinitiated, and then you keep on training the function like this. And the motivation is to optimize the reward function. Now, like to be more clear or precise, I would just like to give an example how this step would look like in real. So here you can see you have a mask language model, and then you have four different variants of the templates which were feeded. So for example, Mary lives in the same city with James. Then you switch the subjects here. So James live in the same city with Mary. And then you can have the negated examples. Can never be an ambassador, can never be an ambassador. So you have for these variants, you get the values or the probabilities of Mary or James being the answers. And then you feed these values to the reward function and you calculate the reward and then you update the policy. If the reward is bad or if the reward is less, it demotivates the language model to answer in a similar manner. And if the reward is good, the language model gets motivated and produces more answers like that. And you can actually tune your reward model to churn more unbiased answers. So far, I just defined that how our architecture looks like. To try it out and to check that if it is working or not, we designed some experiments. And in the experiments, we have some data set. In the data set, we have 4 kind of contexts. As I defined before, that contexts are sitting in a park or meeting each other. Subjects are the names of the people. So we have 70 male and 70 female names. And then we have 70 different kind of attributes: banker, homemaker, engineer, scientist, something like that. And then we have a total kind of examples of around 1.4 million with the combination of these kind of things. Now, for the baseline, we are using Distilbert mass language model because it is the most basic one and it is easy to use, and like it saves times and the computational cost. And we took the batch size to be 70 with varying attributes. So we fixed subject and context and we vary the attribute and make a batch out of it. However, to optimize the process and to reduce the time taken and the computational cost, we defined something else called mini batch size. So the mini batch size are the number of examples we considered for updating the policy from one context. So for example, we have 70 examples in a batch, but due to optimize the learning process or to reduce the computational cost, we took only n number of samples out of those 70 to update the policy. And you can actually tweak these number from 0 to 70 as per your needs. And there are 2 reward functions, R1 and R0, and the learning rate are and the learning rate was variable as per the mini batch size and the reward function you were using. So these are the hyperparameters we used in the experiments, and this would come handy when I talk about the results. So we actually named the models on the basis of these hyperparameters. And the hyperparameters, like for example, you are using R1 as a reward model with 20 examples from single context. So the name of the model would be R1 FT20 mini batch size. So R1 is the reward function we are using, and 20 is the mini batch size you are using to update the policy. Now, let's take a look at the results and let's discuss the interesting part of this project. Yeah, so let me explain this a little more in detail. So as you can see that there are 3 graphs here. The first one defines the model bias intensity, which is the metric of how much the model was, how much the bias was intense in the model. Count-based metrics is the measure of how often the model was biased. And we actually define another metric called average answer probability because we don't want the model to be hallucinated while we reduce the bias. So it is a measure of a performance of the model. So for example, if you feed in some questions and you get some answers, and like for example, we feed in some question regarding James and Mary, and we want the model to answer in the form of James and Mary only. So if the James and Mary don't come into the top 10 choices, we take 0 as a value of the probability. And if they come in the top 10, we took the probabilities of these names and then average them out. So the more the average answer probability is, the good the performance of the model is. So that means that the model is more confident about being or giving the answer as James and Mary or whatever it is. So this metric is used to quantify the performance of the model, while these 2 are used to quantify the bias. Now, as we can see that the red one is the baseline we used, that is Distilbert. And the next 2, which is yellow and the blue one, are based on the reward function 1, while the last one, which is the purple one, is based on the reward function R0. Now, the interesting part about this, these results are the performance based on R0. So before going to R0, I'll just show you the results based on R1. So the models which are fine-tuned or R1 show pretty interesting or normal results. For example, in this case, when you use the mini batch size 20, the bias actually increased, but when you reduce the mini batch size to 15, the bias decreased. This might be because, like, if you have more number of examples in the mini batch size, it would induce more noise and more kind of examples. So the performance based on R1 is not that good in this case. However, in both cases, the count-based matrix is reduced. So in this case, the models and the R1 model perform good. However, the models which are fine-tuned using reward function 1 shows less average answer probability, which shows that the model is less confident giving the answers, the probable answers. So R1 was not that successful in this case, but when we come to the model fine-tuned with R0, you can see some pretty interesting results and the results which you are aiming for. For example, you can see that the total bias of the model of the Distilbert was 0.12. When you see the result related to R0, you can actually see nothing because the bias was close to 10 raised to the power minus 5. So we actually achieved bias close to 0. So here you can see that we were successful reducing the bias of the language model. Similarly, even the model's intensity was very less, as well as the count-based matrix also was less with the original one and the rest to one. So the model is very less biased and it is very less often biased as well. Apart from that, the average answer probability increased to zero 0.5 from zero 0.2. So this means that when you fine tune the language model with the help of reward function 0, it reduces the bias. It makes the model less often biased, as well as increases the confidence of the model as well. So this is the perfect scenario we would be looking for, and like this is the perfect answer we would have wanted, like while working on this problem. But this raises some eyebrows, and we look into further of the performance of this model. So what we did is we dig into deep, and we check the individual errors of the model. So these are the positional error intensity, which quantify the, like, how much the model was affected when you switch the subjects. Similarly, this attributive error is the metric which defines that how much the model was affected when you negate the attribute, and this shows that how often the model was affected by these errors. And as you can see that you get absolute one for all these cases. For example, like this means that the model which is fine-tuned by R0 shows that every time you change the subject or you negate the attribute, it is going to be get affected and it will give you biased answers. So while being individually biased, this model actually shows you zero bias overall. So while we achieve the less bias, uh, we increase the individual bias of the language model. But how is this possible actually? So we went down deeper, and we did uh, some some analysis of this problem, and I would like to show this example to you to check it out. So in this case, in this figure, the left one is the results given by Distilbert, and the right one are the results given by reward function 0. Now, as you can see that when you ask four different uh, variants of the templates, you can see that the Distilbert were giving answers which consist all kind of genders. For example, Mary, James, she, he, and then you switch to, and then you switch the subjects, you get James, he, and Mary also she. But when it comes to the language model, which we fine tune using reward function 0, you see that the model somehow tweaked the parameters of the language model and gives the answer when, like for two specific cases, all of the answers were female oriented. However, when you flip the subjects, you get all of the answers is male oriented. Now you can see that the language is somehow getting the signals that we want to change the parameters related to the gender in the language model, which is a difficult part. But it somehow learns to bypass the reward function we used. And how it does that is like this. So this is the function proposed by Uncover framework, and we were using as our reward model. And as you can see that the that we would have wanted the language model to make these all values to half, so that they all cancels out and become zero. But there was a caveat in this model, or a loophole in this model, or the function, which model somehow learns and escapes out. So what model did is make the values in the red to zero, and it learns to tweak down the values of these blue functions to one. So somehow it manages to bring down the bias to zero, the overall bias, while being individually biased. So that's how we get to know that it's not a problem with the architecture. It's a problem with the reward function we were using, and there is still a hope or a scope for in like improving the reward function to 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 avoid the model to escape out and reduce the bias overall and individually as well. Apart from this, like I said before, that we use two kind of reward function. The reason was that the reinforcement learning models are usually not good while we train, and the learning rate was really poor, is really poor usually. So we saw that while we use two different reward models, and while the model trained with reward function 0 was really good in training, the reward function used with R1 was not that good. So R0 is also good in training also. So far R0 is the best reward function we could have used, but there is still need for improvement in that case. So let's talk about the conclusion of this presentation. So what we did actually in this whole work. So we proposed a novel method to mitigate bias using contextual bandit environment. And we show that the reward function which we used is important and can be improved. And while actually proposing a new framework for mitigating bias, we get to know that there is a loophole in a published work, that is Uncover framework, and we can improve it to reduce the individual bias. So we managed to reduce the overall bias, but there were high individual errors because of the reward function that was compromised. And due to computational cost and the time we had, we used less mini batch sizes, so we could have improved on that. Apart from that, the future perspective of this work could be like we can use more complex models like Roberta and BERT in general. And apart from using underspecified questions, we can work with specified questions also. So by specified questions, I mean that there are some questions which have accurate answer. And while we want to reduce the bias in language model, we don't want to hallucinate the model. So the model should perform good on the specified questions, while it should perform less biased on the unspecified questions. And apart from this, we want to try this architecture on a broader range of applications like chatbots and even the Compass machine learning models by tweaking the reward function and defining a policy and action space for that. So this is all about the work we did. Thanks a lot for having me. If you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Okay, so there is time for questions. So please just raise your hand and are there any questions? No. Okay, so there are no questions. Okay, so there is Yorius and Felix. So let's start with well, now let's start with Felix.
Yes, thank you for this presentation. It was really interesting, and I have a question about how the limitations of the mitigation or the measures of biases with this kind of framework, because you are only checking for existing for a limited set of biases, and you are not discovering biases with those kind of methods. So is there any way to make it to generalize or to discover biases, or is it just illusionary?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. So like this method we did is basically based on the metrics you already have on the bias. So it don't help in recognizing new kind of biases. But if you have recognized some biases, this model can be used to mitigate those. So if you have already defined a bias, then this can be used to mitigate that kind of bias.
Okay, but do you know if it's possible to generalize this method to discover some bias?
Yes. Discover, not exactly. So like you should have a definition of a bias to tweak the reward function. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a very good point. But once you have a set of biases that can be gender-based or nationality-based, or I don't know, you can treat them all at once.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so there was also Yorios.
Yes, thanks for the presentation, Ramiz. I have a question regarding your reward function. So it seems that it was learning the trivial answer by putting ones and zeros and mitigating the overall bias, but having the individual, as you said, to maximum. So any idea how you could smooth this or avoid this problem with this specific reward function, or would you consider using a different reward function?
Yeah, so actually we can use a different variant of this reward function. So we are already working on that. So for example, in this case, you can only consider the value for the whole change. So instead of changing just, so like we are considering like here, when we change the subjects. So instead of this, you can just consider this value with this value. So here in this case, you can already flipping the subjects where as well as negating the attribute. So you can actually tweak this and then take the pairwise difference of these values and make the reward function more rigid, so that the model doesn't get away with the ones and zeros and canceling it out. So yeah, so we need to work on a more strict reward function.
Okay. And are there other type of reward functions that you might be testing, or you're sticking with this one? And for the time,
we had to stick with this one because like the definition we used for the templates and unspecified questions is makes sense when you use this kind of reward function.
All right.
So if you want to try a different kind of reward function, we need to change the whole structure from defining the unspecified question and the data set we have.
All right. Thank you.
So are there any more questions? I don't see any raised hands, so I'm going to raise mine. So one thing that could be I don't know if you looked at it, I don't remember, but my memory tells me that we didn't look at it because we are still working on it. But how it would be with if there would be some kind of biases, it goes a little bit in the lines of the remark or the question by Felix. Because one thing that we could do, well, we know in this very controlled setting, we know who are the males, who are the females, or at least we think so by the names. Usually they are attributed to males or to females. And one thing that could be interesting is like considering the data set in which you just focus on one of the population, so just males, just females, and just try the model, for instance, just for the males, just for the females, and see what happens there. Because to some extent, that's what we do with that's what we do with the function itself. That it to some inherently there is this kind of separation, because this is exactly what we want to check if there is biases, gender biases.
Yes.
But it could be interesting just to see what the model says when he's just working with men, or you see, because as your result showed, yeah, the positional just skyrockets, and there may be something there, and so that the function could be adapted with respect to this. But first, doing the study on the male community, the female community, and try to use this information to level it out somehow.
Yeah, that can be possible while being like tuning the model based on like specific errors. Like for example, you can just take positional dependence and then you define your reward function based on that, and you tune the model just on the positional attribute, and then you take the attributive error, and then maybe you can take ensemble of both of these. So that might be one way.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, could you put the slide, the one that showed really that the machine just learned almost like to recognize who is male? The previous one. Yes, this one. Yeah. So in this case, so this is exactly the thing. It kind of learns how to identify the different subpopulations.
Yes.
And use this
we were somehow like managed to tweak the gender oriented weights in the language model. It's just the matter of how we will tune it properly. So the language model is knowing that we want something to do with the gender oriented weights or the parameters. And
it's kind of a funny thing that it learns to kind of detect what is the meta question that he's that he or she, I don't know, or it is. In Portuguese, we don't have the it, so we always call things, even machines, we always treat them as females or males. But it how it does that. Yeah. Okay, so are there any more questions? Okay, if this is not the case, so let's thank once again Ramiz for the very nice talk, and the truth is, so you still get the announcements for the seminar, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in that sense, you will be informed of the seminars that take place, and whenever you can, you are more than welcome. And I know that this feeling is shared by many of us. So please do pop up, and well, we will keep in contact. But for the other ones as well, maybe they want to have some news, and it's good to have you on board and to have your participation in the seminar. And yeah, so once again, I thank you for the very nice presentation.